So I'm Brad Andrews. I'm the ITF at Shelby Middle School in Cleveland County, and I'm also media coordinator here. And I'll let Eli introduce himself. We got somebody else coming in.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us this afternoon. I think this is the first time there's been a fall virtual conference with NCTIES. This is my first experience with NCTIES. I am Eli Wortman. I'm the principal at Shelby High School in Shelby, North Carolina, and just excited to share a little bit about what we're doing in Cleveland County Schools and at Shelby High and Shelby Middle. With using some different things with Google, specifically Looker Studio, to be able to drive engagement and accountability in your classrooms. And so this is some of the things that we're going to talk about today are some strategies that I've used over the past couple of years, and that's been very helpful for our school, and hope that you can take it back and run with it wherever you are. If you wouldn't mind sharing, what roles do you guys play at your school?
So I'm a social studies teacher for 8th grade, and I'm also teaching science this year for the first time. And I'm, in addition to piloting a pre-AP class for one of my social studies classes. And I'm also one of our advanced lead teachers as well.
Oh, wow. That's a lot there. You're doing a lot.
Yes.
Thanks for
Yes.
sharing. My wife is teaching a pre-AP class for the first time this year too, so I understand.
Oh, okay. Is she social studies?
She is high school English.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's been exciting to watch the kids, and they've given me a lot of autonomy with it. And basically the class was built off of teacher recommendations.
Cool. Thank you. See, I think we've got Brenda. We've got several in now. Would anybody else like to share what their roles are in their school?
Yeah, sure. Hey, no, go ahead, Brenda. Are you going?
Yes, I'm Brenda,
Okay.
and I'm with Wayne County Public Schools, and I am an education technology specialist at the district level for Wayne County Schools in Goldsboro.
Thank you, Brenda.
Awesome. I am Tiffany Bird, and I am the K-12 instructional coach for Ignite Online Academy.
All right. Thank you, Tiffany. And I think Brad has been letting several more folks in. And if you would like to, you can just drop in the chat. Anyone else that would like to share what their roles are and where they are at their schools. And we'll get started with our presentation. I'm going to share my screen. And Brad, if you don't mind throwing the link to the presentation in as well, but we'll have a bit.ly for you to get to, but that may help you get to our presentation. So as I said before, I think some of you joined. We'd like just to share some things that we're doing in our schools, to where we are not only practicing walkthroughs on a consistent basis, but taking the data that we get and are creating some things to be able to show teachers what they're doing well in the classroom, find trends of what's going well across the school, and also have great discussions as administrators, and also great discussions with teachers seeking to improve their practices in the classroom. So we just, our agenda today, as you can see, just want to give you a little bit of background of where this process started with us, and also why I feel like it's important to use walkthrough data with a purpose. And the way that we've been able to do that is through Google's Looker Studio. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And you could have no experience with that whatsoever. You could have a lot of experience with it. We just want to show you what we're doing with walkthroughs using this Looker Studio, and give you a chance to play around with that at the end of this presentation with some sample data that we're going to show you. So just a little bit of background of where this whole process started with me. I read Four Disciplines of Execution by Chris McChesney several years ago, and that just lit a spark under me about not only having goals as a school leader or as a school in general, but also doing something with those with a purpose. If you've never read that, I've got a link to where you can check that out on Amazon, and it's one of my all-time favorite leadership books if you're into that sort of thing. But the key points to the Four Disciplines of Execution talk about setting goals, like big, audacious goals, but not only that, thinking about what it takes on a daily basis to meet those goals. What are the things that you can control, that you are in control of to be able to reach that goal? So that's the second discipline, is knowing what it takes on a daily basis. The third is making sure that you're meeting with your team with a purpose on a regular basis, talking about, are you meeting those daily things or not? And the fourth is being able to keep score with that. And that's where Looker Studio comes into play with how we've done walkthroughs with the past few years. I feel like every school has goals. Every good leadership team focuses on what they can control. And we do a good job in schools a lot of times of having committees, meeting with a purpose, but are we really giving our teachers a scoreboard, so to speak, to show them, hey, we are hitting these marks every day to help our kids be successful? And Looker Studio can do that. I like to keep score with the walkthrough. I think it promotes individual growth for teachers. I think that it paints it paints a clear picture for an administrator, whole school, regarding whole school needs, regarding whole school, hey, this is where we're struggling, just looking for those types of trends. But it also gives our individual teachers some ways to grow and to use that as a great reflection tool. So we'll see some examples of how we've done that over the past year or so. Again, this is the whole point of walkthroughs, does these things for us. I just talked about that with the previous slide. So we are looking for trends in our walkthrough data. And another thing that we've done a lot of in the past year or so is use our walkthrough data as a whole school and looked with those trends, what are our teachers' professional development needs? Is it classroom management strategies? Is it engagement strategies? Is it questioning strategies? All of that tied back to the walkthrough data that we were pulling, and we were able to do some timely professional developments with whole groups or small groups within our school. I'm not sure who's familiar with Looker Studio and who's not. We've got a link there to the landing page for Looker Studio, but it is just a Google product that accepts your data, such as all the data you may have in a Google Sheet. If you're like us and you're doing walkthroughs with a Google form, it's taking all that data and it helps you to create easy to read charts, graphs, trend lines with any kind of data that you have. And it's very user friendly. And it's easy to mess around with to find the data that you need to find. And it displays it in a dashboard setting so that you can look at it with your admin team. You can share it with your school leadership team or your staff in general, and just look at school-wide trends. And that's how we've really used it over the past year or so. I've got one example I would like to show you and walk through, and then Brad has a second example of how he's done some things at Shelby Middle in the same type of layout. And then we will let you play around with that system a little bit and explore on your own Looker Studio and being able to create those graphs from some sample walkthrough data. I've got linked on our slideshow, our Google form that we use for walkthroughs. If you want to, you should be able to click at that and just be able to view that. If not, we can try to fix that for you. But if you this is the model we use. We look for certain things as we are doing walkthroughs, since we are keeping score, so to speak, and we are providing this information back to our teachers. We try to be very objective with the questions that we're asking in our walkthroughs. We are looking for specific things, going back to the 4 disciplines of execution. We're looking for specific things that teachers can be doing on a daily basis to help us reach our goal of being a school of growth. So we look for our lesson target, our learning targets on the board. Our kids, are their heads up? Are they engaged? Is the teacher up and moving around in the classroom? Are they monitoring the classroom? How are Chromebooks being used? How is technology being used in the classroom? Is it being used effectively or not? So all of those, we try to ask those objective questions and give objective feedback to teachers on an individual basis, and also look at that information from a data collection standpoint from just the whole school altogether as well. But you should have access to our Google form. I'm going the wrong way. So that info from the Google form, as you probably know, enters into a Google sheet, and we've just got a sample here of where we've done so many walkthroughs in this Google sheet. But the neat thing to see is once we tie that Google sheet into our Looker Studio dashboard. So here is the example of our walkthrough scoreboard that we look at as an administrative team, and also share some data with our teachers. What I like about Looker Studio, especially if I go to my staff update graphs page, is that this information is filterable and customizable. So you see the objective things that we look for as we go through a walkthrough. And if I want to focus on teachers, if I want to focus on, all right, if our teachers don't have learning targets on the board, how is that affecting everything else? I can just look at all of the data that we have that shows where a teacher did not have a learning target on the board. And in our case last year, we noticed that if teachers don't have learning targets on the board, our disengagement was up, the amount of Chromebooks being used was up, heads down may have been up as well. So you can play around with that information and find trends and find needs of for professional development there as well. What I would typically like to do sharing school-wide data is to take a screenshot of this page right here for my staff to see this is how we are doing as a school right now, and be able to show them where the good things are and where the bad things are, and remind them, you know, what are our individual things that we are doing on a daily basis to reach our goal of being a school of growth.
And if I could interject, one thing that we were going over the other day as you were looking back at that in Looker Studio, when you click on one portion of those charts, and as he's looking at individual things like heads down, just seeing what the effect is throughout, you know, the rest of school, the other trends that you notice off of those is a huge feature to that.
Yes. And yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, Brad. Yeah, and you can, like, we have traditionally we have struggled as a school for a while just with student engagement. That was the case before I arrived at my school, and we have made a big focus on that. And that's why we're looking at things like, were there any heads down when you went in to do the walkthrough? So you can, again, filter that and see kind of what the rest of those trends are. Just sharing the rest of my process that we've used for walkthroughs over the past few years with Looker Studio. This process doesn't work if you are not putting in the walkthroughs and making that important. So our administrators and our curriculum coaches have a goal of completing 3 walkthroughs a week, and also meeting once a week to discuss that data. So that is protected time for us. We try to get that in. We make it a point to get those in 3 a week and meet and discuss it every week. And that has made a big impact on the instructional practices at our school. As I mentioned, we send data to our teachers once per week, just a snapshot of this is where we're at. And we're also designing that professional development around what we're seeing as an administrative team.
Okay. So the one that we had was very similar. This was actually, this Google form is set up for middle schools. So if you click on the example form for example 2 there, you can see it's kind of set up with more of a middle school mindset as you're looking at what we're looking for. Very similar though to what you're gonna see with the high school, but there was a few things that we just wanted to highlight, or that I wanted to highlight, you know, as far as the types of questions that we were really looking at and focusing on. I think that it's very important that we're, first of all, doing, you'll notice that a lot of these are actually multiple choice or drop down versus a checkbox. When you're trying to collect this data, we were doing 5-minute walkthroughs. And so the question is, in that 5 minutes of time, what are you really seeing from the classroom? Trying to get a glimpse of what is going on in that 5 minutes. It's not I got you, but it's what are they doing right now? Maybe later on they're doing more monitoring and facilitating, but right now, are they just doing direct instruction? That's what I'm going to mark down. And so then the goal obviously is to have several walkthroughs, so you're collecting lots of data from different periods of time and different classes, as well as the beginning of class, the end of class, the middle of class. And so some of these questions on here are trying to get that information as well, so that we don't duplicate too much in terms of the same time every day or the same time every week, so that we can get a little bit better picture of generally what it's like in there. Part of the reason, if you could go back to, I guess I'll highlight the Looker Studio link there to go back to looking at what we're trying to look for data, some good useful data. We set up a table with ours and some conditional formatting. So if there were certain things that we're looking for, such as whether classroom management is there, we can set up a table and we can have those red flags, so that over there I have the teachers all blocked out, but where you could look at an individual teacher and see, okay, there's a flag there that classroom management's a real issue here. And that might be something that we really want to look at. And then even recording over on the side, well, how many walkthroughs have they had? And we've determined that. And you're looking at 2 that were scored the same way. So those are obviously any kind of red flags and things that we really want to address, not from I gotcha, again, can't reiterate that enough, but from a staff development, from a conferencing perspective of trying to be able to assist these teachers and help them evaluate what they're doing in the classroom, what might not be right, and address problems that are real problems, such as I think one of the questions is well, there was the standards, and there was is the environment safe, was one of our questions. And obviously you want to throw up a red flag for anybody or be able to throw up a red flag for anybody that's walking through that classroom, observes a situation that is really not going to be helpful or safe. The other thing that I wanted to highlight on that same picture is up at the top. I mentioned earlier, making sure that you're using the checkbox, or not using the checkboxes, using some more definitive answers, such as with a drop down or with a multiple choice. If you notice, I don't know that it actually doesn't say it there in the picture, but the student engagement, I think, actually, no, it's a different slide that I'm thinking of. This one's pretty clear, but there's another slide that I'm thinking of, that instead of flipping to it, if you can picture the pie chart there where it says other, and one of the, is it the feedback document there?
That's I think
Oh,
it's
it's one of those images there.
so you're talking about in a situation where we've got check boxes, right?
Yeah. So so if you're doing check boxes, then it should be image number 2 there. where it shows when you have check boxes, you can end up with a plethora of information that really tells you nothing, such as in the top two charts here, the blue represents others. So when you use the check boxes, it combines your answers, and you might have, monitoring plus sitting plus all of these, and each different answer is going to create a whole nother choice, and you're going to see a pie chart that really ends up telling you nothing. So you want to stay away from those types of questions. You want to obviously have ones that you can be a little bit more definitive with, and really narrow down what's going on primarily in that room. Now, Eli also has, if you did want to have more of a larger picture, and if you do a walkthrough where you have more things going on, the example that he was giving,
people, like last year we could only invite one, and we had more.
the one that he was giving an example of earlier, where he was talking about heads down, where there are some formulas that you can add in there to try to narrow down those ones where you do want maybe a longer walkthrough and you have more information. But if you're doing like what we're doing with just 5-minute quick walkthroughs, you can get a lot more information, and you do want to be careful though that you're not trying to pack too much into that.
Yeah, so to Brad's point, on our walkthrough that we use, we have one question that talks about all the things students are doing. But we from that one question, we built 2 or 3 different charts about whether or not they were using Chromebooks, whether or not they had their heads down, and you had to go in and do some backlogging for that to avoid that issue of it just being a mess of a pie chart, because it was a checkbox question. And once you can do that, you end up with the chart that you want, but you've had to go in and do a bunch of fixing in the background of Looker Studio to pull out the information that you want. And it doesn't have to be that complicated, but you just have to think. We didn't think beforehand when we created some of those questions. And so we had to be creative on the back end to get the charts that we want. So that's some of the things that we've learned along the way, and some possible pitfalls. And Brad's mentioned a couple of times too that we've got to be mindful that this process of not only doing walkthroughs but having a scoreboard for those things that you feel like is important. It cannot negatively impact morale. It's got to be you've got to move in the direction that everybody is on board with the process. Everybody has that same end goal in mind. Again, our goal at our school is that we strive to be that school of growth, and to be able to do that, we've got to focus on the right things every day for our teachers' sake and our students' sake, to have the academic atmosphere that we want in the classroom. So our folks are on board with that growth process. I mean, we've spent a lot of time building to that. This process is it's designed to hold folks accountable for themselves and not necessarily everyone else. But we've got goals that we want to meet in the classroom. Teachers have individual goals that they want to see through in their classroom, and this helps them grow and meet those goals. We don't use this information in evaluations. We don't pull up walkthrough info or the Looker Studio with individual teachers and say, all right, this is what your chart looks like. It's just purely for individual growth with the individual feedback, and then reflection and school-wide trends when we are looking at the school level data. A couple other things before we get into sampling it all together. Once you get into Looker Studio and get into building these things, I mean, the sky is the limit with how you show your data and how you produce that data back to teachers. This year, we have changed our walkthrough process a little bit to where our administrators are going in pairs, and that has opened up a lot of great discussions between administrators, because the administrators are putting that information into the walkthrough system, and it is generating an email back to that teacher to say, hey, these are all the great things you've been doing. These are some of the things that we noticed, and it gives them individual feedback as soon as we enter that information. And that was one of the things our teachers wanted last year. So we've got some extensions running in our Google Sheets and through that whole process to be able to do some added things. You've got to start and it's simple and learn that process. But once you get it going, you can build on it and truly make it a great system. So we've got some time to play around with Looker Studio with some sample data if you would like to. One thing that you can do is click on the sample sheet and download it, or not download it, but make a copy for yourself. So if you want to do that and also get logged into Looker Studio, as you're doing that, we can get set up. We'll be glad to answer any questions you have while we're setting that up as well.
And if we'll give you a minute, but we'll go ahead and go into Looker Studio real quick just to show you how you would, once you make a copy, how you can easily import that information.
So I've made a copy of this info, and it's the copy of the example classroom walkthrough template. So that's the first thing you want to do is just have that in your drive. And the second thing is to, when you open Looker Studio, this is my landing page. Yours may look different. You may have to create an account. Again, just depending on how much you've used that with. But once you do that, you can create a blank report. And you just want to tie that example, that copy of that example, by going to Google Sheets. And hopefully, since it's the last one you use, it's at the top of your pile there. And you also have to pick which worksheet in that spreadsheet you want to choose. And you just want to use your form responses for that. And you just click add that info. So from there, if you are in Looker Studio, you've got the data connected, you've got that data, you can play with different charts and different graphs with that information we've given you. You've got over here on your data segment right here, the different columns in the spreadsheet, and it's just asking questions from an example walkthrough that we had provided. And you can also see the questions here on the spreadsheet. We had an observer, we had a teacher, we had a department. Is there evidence of standards-based instruction? Was there a learning target on the board? Were there clear expectations? And we're just looking to see if the teacher was up moving around, or were they sitting? Is there a classroom management plan in place? Things like that. So given that info, is there, and I'm still sharing my screen, is there anything that you would want to create or look at based on that data?
Well, let's kind of walk through a pie chart of just adding in some of those categories, because it's really quite simple. You just add a chart and you can choose the type that you want. So then you can select pie chart, drag that where you want it to be. And then you'll notice that it gives you the options for what it's going to actually be demonstrating or showing. And you can take any of the categories from over there in the columns that he had. So yeah, teacher communicates clear expectations, drop it into the dimensions area, and then it's going to create a chart there relaying that data that you recorded. And then it's real easy to add more pie charts. You can then mess with your settings and style in order to add titles, but you also can add text boxes and kind of design it the way you want once you get your information over there. And this is kind of where like he was saying, the sky's the limit in terms of design. Some people go and grab a template for a background once they get going and create something that looks a whole lot nicer in Canva or another form of software, but it can be as simple or as complicated as you want. The main thing is getting the information that you want demonstrated here on the chart in a way that's easy to read.
And this stuff is cross filterable as well. So if you want to know how your history department is doing with student engagement, you should be able to just click on the history, and then it filters your pie chart up here. It also filters who the observer was. So all of this is connected data, and you can do that for any of them. And again, digging into that data, having a true data dive to figure out what's the good things going on in your class, in your classrooms and your building, and what are some things that can be improved upon.
Another feature that you'll want to probably install right away is adding a control. What a control is going to do is it's going to also filter there for you. So you can add a drop down list, for instance, over here. And then when you're looking at the control field, you might choose a teacher or the observer. This one's the observer. So you can see if it's a particular, AP or instructional coach that's you want to see just the way they're rating people and what they're doing, or if you're looking at just a particular teacher and you want to see, well, in that class, what's it looking like, then you can drag that over there and you can have it all sorted basically by the individual teacher. You could also do that if you had, like we've had where we have content areas all grouped together. So then you could do that by content area as well. Yes, there is a bit.ly. Let me drop it again here. It's, I think I have it pasted here.
Should be NCTIES walkthroughs.
Yeah. And I dropped it in the chat as well. But feel free to make copies of whatever you want that we've put in here. Look through the presentation, play around. If you have any questions at this point, you can drop them in the chat. You could unmute yourself. I think we're running kind of close to the end of time, so I don't want to go over too much here.
Yeah. Well, we just appreciate everybody joining us and looking at this info with us. We hope that you've got to see some other great things from the conference, and hope that you can take something away from our presentation. Also, we'll be glad to hang out and help anybody with any questions they've got, or if you have what you need, you're free to sign off as well.
As far as the step-by-step, I think we don't really have it all laid out there. You can find a lot of great stuff online. I think that really the way we got into it was just kind of trial and error. Like I said, pulling like we said, pulling a spreadsheet and just kind of start adding some pie charts with your dimensions, your data over there, dragging them over. I think it's something that if you start getting into it, you really can't mess it up too much. The nice thing is you can always delete the Looker Studio view here, but it's not going to affect your spreadsheet. So even if you had, you know, some spreadsheet data you're careful of, you don't really have to, you don't have to worry about messing that up. And yeah, the recording session, as Chris put in the chat there, will be available later on.
So some of the things you're doing, is it the pro account that you have to do all these, or just the basic level?
This, as far as Looker Studios goes, this is all there. I don't have a pro account.
Okay.
It is all basic, yeah.
And you said there are some tutorials out there that'll help me get started.
Oh yeah.
And you all started with your Google form?
Yeah, so if you Google form again is just the way that we're collecting the information, and that goes to that Google sheet. So however, you know, this process for us only works because that's how we've been doing our walkthroughs. I've used Looker Studio before to look at grade trends, like kids, like their report card grades, and put everybody's report card in to see, all right, here our trends are in ninth grade versus 12th grade, or in the math department versus the social studies department. But it's all Looker Studio, from my experience, has been putting my information in a spreadsheet, which is where that Google form comes. And since I've got it in a spreadsheet, then I can make it into that scoreboard we were talking about and be able to find those trends a lot easier. So whatever you're looking for through a walkthrough, or however you want to show any kind of data, you've got to start with, how are you going to input that data? And again, that's with that Google form for us. The Google sheet just houses all that information, and the Looker Studio makes it look pretty.
Good question so far. Is there anybody else have any questions?
Like, can you tell me, other than walkthroughs, where do you see using something like this, like a data, I guess I refer to this like a data dashboard, that it can be used for? Any other examples you come to mind that this could be used for?
I sat through a presentation this summer talking about using it as a media specialist to track books read and things that are going on. So anywhere you would have a general scoreboard, you could use it. It's just about how you get your data at that point in order to put it in there. But any spreadsheet will work. I know we've pulled stuff from PowerSchool. We're still using PowerSchool here, but you can pull from any of your learning management systems or from your SIS some information that then you could then analyze. Obviously you want to be careful as far as throwing personal information into Google, and but and how much you're sharing out. But you could do that with just about anything where you're doing a scoreboard. We've done well, I'll let Eli talk about some of the different things that he's done, because he's been a little bit more adventurous with it with a lot of data.
Another neat thing we've done before with PLCs, when I was here at Shelby Middle with Brad, was we wanted to focus on our PLCs meeting with purpose, and doing things intentionally every week to, again, have students be successful. So at that point, we were tracking how many phone calls teachers were making per week. So they would enter the info into a Google form, and it would show up, and everybody had access to this data dashboard. And so it was measuring, did we meet our goal or not? And we also measured, we were big at that time also about just doing spiral reviews, spiraling some EOG questions on a daily basis, and that being something that we can control. So teachers filled out, I made 3 phone calls this week. I spiraled 3 days out of 5, and then it would populate with everybody else's answers on this dashboard, and we could see whether or not our teams met that goal. And it's not singling anybody out. It's not saying this person did really good and this person did really bad. It is a team effort, and it shows that team scoreboard. Some specific things we've done with the walkthrough information and this walkthrough data dashboard again is we noticed that there was a trend between, all right, I'm not doing the little things of not writing my learning target on the board. We also noticed, well, that's very heavily you're not up and moving around as much as you are, and you are not engaging your students as much as you are either, based on that data we can see there. So we made it a point at that point to say everybody needs to have your learning target on the board. It's not about going through that hoop, but it's about being in the right mindset of, I'm starting my day the right way. I'm making sure that I know what I'm teaching. I'm making sure that I'm describing to my students what we're talking about that day, and I'm doing the little things right, and everything else kind of went up from there also.
Awesome, thank you. I was just thinking about, I came from a high need school, and I was thinking somehow way tracking or incentive for behaviors or something like that by the homeroom without getting too granular and specific. And then
Yeah.
I was also thinking about trying to, we one of the districts that did transfer or transition to Infinite Campus, getting that learning management system in use, since they have learning management usage tracking available, that possibly using it as a way to look at it by the school, kind of, and look at that data and be able to post it for the district, or of the use of the learning management system and its tools for
Yeah.
increased engagement, student engagement.
Yes, if you've got that data in a nice, and if you can put it in a spreadsheet, what you're looking for, you can make it look. You can make that
Okay.
data. You can make that dashboard out of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right,
All right.
thank you.
But I think, are we?
I was going to say thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. If there's still a couple questions that come in, you can still
Okay.
go ahead and answer those, but I'll go ahead and stop the recording for you.
All right. Thanks, Chris.